going. So, because I brainstorm better out loud, I wanted to talk about what I've been thinking about for my paper topic for Shakespeare 382. That's my cute son that you hear in the background. So you're going to hear that. I've been thinking about Shakespeare's use of folklore, as I've talked about in my previous posts. And I think it's interesting that Shakespeare, in his works, he retells folklore stories, folk stories, and fairy tales, and incorporates fairy tale elements into his plays. So he obviously didn't look down on folklore. And I think this is interesting because I think in our culture, we do tend to look down on folklore and don't consider it like a valid way of storytelling. But the interesting thing is we have this tension between looking down on folklore and fairy tales and stuff like that and calling them for children, but we look up to Shakespeare, who used folklore so frequently, even as his inspiration, like I talked about in The Merchant of Venice, where he uses the folklore about the Jews in England at the time to base his kind of hatred or whatever of Shylock. So I read an article by Laura Miller at salon.com today, and she talks about how the National Book Association, or the National Book, I don't know, the National Book Awards, their board does not accept works that are retellings of fairy tales and folk tales. So I thought this was interesting. They don't accept any folklore, but they do accept Shakespeare in the Bible. And as I talked about already, Shakespeare incorporates folklore into his works. And then the Bible is all stories that had originally had an oral tradition, which is folklore. And, well, it's a base definition of folklore. And then like Proverbs, which Proverbs is all folklore. So I thought that was interesting. They accept retellings of Bible stories of Shakespeare, but not folklore. And so it just kind of points to a cultural demeaning of folklore, or, you know, where we look down on folklore and don't consider it valid. And then I thought that was interesting because we do a similar thing in education today. Educators demean and refuse to use technology when they're educating because they don't consider the internet as a valid way of learning information. So that's where I'm going with my paper so far. I hope you take the time to give me a little feedback about what you think and if you've read anything interesting along those lines.